The Racing Pod
on Off the Ball
with William Hill. Best odds guaranteed on all Irish and UK racing. 18 plus. See gamblingcare.ie.
Welcome to episode 16 of The Racing Pod on Off the Ball. John Duggan and Johnny Ward with you. Remember, we're here every Friday with analysis, race previews, tips, stories, interviews and crack. The first half of the pod each week is free to air. The second part exclusively for members. So be sure to sign up by going to offtheball.com/join. For members this week, we'll preview Saturday's action at Kelso, Newbury and Doncaster and Sunday's card at Leopardstown. Hopefully, weather permitting, it will proceed. Subscribe now for all the juicy info. Cheltenham almost upon us. Johnny Ward, you were meant to go to Clonmel yesterday, but Clonmel didn't happen. And did you happen?
I get slagged for not, I don't have a car and I've never driven since I came to Dublin, although I'm talking about changing that. And the only train you can get to Clonmel is 8 in the morning. That was the only train that you could get. So the train, it's a funny train service because you change Limerick Junction and then it goes on the old line from Limerick, I think, to Waterford or Rosslare, and it's really, really old. It's like going back in time, like the Care Viaduct and place like that, really run-down tracks, including Clonmel. But you get to Clonmel normally anyway and you go to the race or whatever. But yesterday there was an inspection at 7:30, so I was in the taxi to Euston Station. I probably was in the taxi for about a minute max, and I got an email saying I was called off. And then I had this kind of moral obligation to the taxi driver. Was like, well, I only picked you up because I had a fare going from Houston. So I was kind of like, okay, she'll just bring me to Houston anyway. So I stayed there, had a coffee, and walked home. And that was my Clonmel experience. But tough for Lorcan Wire. JD, I was talking to him yesterday, his job's getting tough, and Paddy Graffin tomorrow.
So he's the clerk of the course.
He's the clerk of the course at Clonmel and some others, but they've just had, these at declaration time, I don't think the meeting really was in doubt, but they only got 5 mils overnight on Wednesday night, but it was still enough to cancel it. And if racing goes ahead at Navan and Leopardstown tomorrow, I'd have to say I'd be surprised if it went ahead of both. It'll be really Sunday, testing. Yeah.
It's a 7:30 inspection for Navan on Saturday. The only time I was ever in a helicopter was to go to Clonmel from Dublin at Today FM, where I used to work at a thing called You Do the Maps, our sister station, where they gave 10 grand to somebody who worked out all these maps. And the person had to go to some hotel in Clonmel, and we had the 10 grand. So we got a helicopter from one of these aerodromes, Baldon, or one of these places out in the west of Dublin, in the most glorious weather. And it was like something out of Willy Wonka, and over the fields we saw Punchestown Racecourse, and then we landed in a hotel grounds in Clonmel.
That's pretty cool.
And then came back the same way, 20 minutes each way.
20 minutes?
Each way in a
helicopter.
That is mad. Over Ireland.
You'll have to get Sean Flanagan to bring you somewhere.
Yeah, maybe to Cheltenham, or maybe back from Cheltenham.
Well, he's flying it, and we
literally
exactly. We had him on the live show with JJ Slevin and Gavin Cromwell. And it's interesting with Sean because he had the job at Noel Mead, then he's kind of went back freelance, but it hasn't really halted so much. And the relationship with Gavin Cromwell now, particularly I suppose riding when Keith Donoghue can't do the weight, which sometimes happens. Keith hit 50 for the season at the weekend as well, so the two of them are flying it. But
that was your nap jouster.
Jouster, yeah. He actually kind of was holding on a bit at the end, but just tip Gavin Cromwell on a Saturday is the way to go at the moment, I think.
Especially in England as well. Constitution Hill. Or Constitution Ill. So the defending champion hurdle winner Cheltenham doubtful for the showpiece on Tuesday week after working poorly this week at Kempton, where he was found to have mucus in his scope. The latest statement from his trainer Nicky Henderson reads as follows: the result of the blood test taken this morning goes quite a long way to explaining his disappointing performance at Kempton on Tuesday and confirms he has a significant degree of inflammation. The figures themselves suggest he's definitely under the weather. We will need to repeat the test on Monday in the hope the situation improves. We intend to scope him again tomorrow morning, but it appears the blood test is a more conclusive barometer and the one we need to concentrate on. This is probably not what we were hoping for, but at least it tells us exactly where we are. It seems to me, how can they run him really, unless he's a miraculous recovery?
Yeah.
In terms of match sharpness, match fitness against State Man and the champion hurdle and all the others on Tuesday week. Yeah. And also says to me, the lesson is to run your horses when they're fit and well. Because they haven't done that with Constitution Hill. Only once this season.
Absolutely. And off the top of my head, he's not a horse that has had major problems. I know when he went to the sale after his point-to-point, Barry Gertie and Warren Ewing had him, and he was actually beating his point-to-point, but that's kind of by the by because he was by far the best horse in the race, but he didn't look great at the sale, and they didn't get the price that they thought they should have gotten when Michael Buckley bought him. And at the time, Blue Brazil, his sire, maybe hadn't really kicked off in these parts. But this is just so disappointing. And like social media now is such that I'd say within 10 or 15 minutes of the gallop, it was appearing on WhatsApps. And the first inkling I had was like a screen grab of the betting exchanges where he was like gone out to whatever it was. And now you have this strange situation where you have two long odds on shots in the same race because of the non-runner, no bet anomaly. But just when he said this is probably not what we were hoping for, this I'm quoting from Twitter today, that, it just doesn't sound great. And I do have some sympathy for Nicky Henderson because I slag Paul Nicholls a bit for kind of running away from Cheltenham a lot. And in fairness, Nicky Henderson treats it like maybe a little bit excessively in terms of respect. So I have a bit of sympathy. But run your horse, Judy. He could have come to Leopardstown and they would have had an amazing day out. Michael Buckley bringing the horse back to his homeland. And this is really disappointing because as much as like I wasn't expecting State Man to beat him, just the way Paul Townend spoke after the race last year, I think he was going to get closer. And Constitution Hill is coming in like it's not ideal prep coming into the race after basically winning the Egg and Spoon race and your only start the season. And I don't know. I mean, I was really looking forward to that race. Maybe it'll happen. It just doesn't look great at the moment. I don't know what Binocular came back from almost the dead to run and win. But no, it doesn't look great. And I'd be really disappointed. I know Cheltenham have struggled to sell tickets this year relative to the other years. There are issues, I got an email today about just the cost of accommodation in Cheltenham. It's so expensive to go over there. The cost of the tickets.
You need to have my arrangement. It was 20 years.
Yeah, well,
it's
you see, some people are lucky that they have a long-standing alliance. But if you're going over there and then you want to see the best, you want to see possibly the best jumper I've ever seen, and hopefully he'll make it. Doesn't sound great though.
Interesting though, if it really puts the cat among the pigeons in terms of the market. Like, will Lossiemouth potentially turn up at the Champion Hurdle now? Irish Point, they're talking about maybe reverting him to 2 miles. It's going to be fascinating. Yeah,
because Gordon Elliott's stable visit during the week. I wasn't actually there, but he said that Teopu is going to be Jack Kennedy's mount pretty much in the Stayers Hurdle one way or the other.
The soft ground, I think, is an important part because the water table has been quite high at Cheltenham the last year, and that means even though there was no rain, we're looking at softer ground than normal at Cheltenham.
This is a very, very important point that people will look at the Racing Post and they'll see going soft or they'll see going soft to heavy, and the going soft to heavy in Ballinrobe in the middle of June is one thing. The going soft to heavy at Cheltenham at the moment, and if it were that, like so many race courses, it has rained so much over a 12-month period that the water tables are high, and it's like it was interesting just when Lorcan Wire gave his initial statement before the meeting was called off. He said the going is really, he basically said very testing, and really, really deep. Horses finishing tired, and I think that's a big factor in Teopu's. If Jack Kennedy were to ride him, but I think Irish Point now rerouting to the Champion Hurdle makes sense.
Okay. I want to do this thing, Johnny, with 11 days to go to the Cheltenham Festival. 10 questions around Cheltenham, so I can construct 10 questions and we'll give it a go and have a bit of fun with it for the audience. 100 years this year since the first Cheltenham Gold Cup. What's been your favourite Gold Cup and why?
So, I'll put that question to you first, actually. What was your favourite?
One I wasn't at. So before I went to Cheltenham as a broadcaster in 2002, I went in 1999 from Cottage home to get the VHS and get the tape that I put on earlier for the Gold Cup, and I'd Seymour Business backed. And it got to the stage where I was on my knees when Seymour Business and Go Ballistic jumped the last.
Who was third?
Florida Pearl. And Seymour Business had enough bravery and class to get home just in front of Mick Fitzgerald. I told my dad to back it. He wasn't there in the house. The house was empty. Ran up the hill to the bookmakers. He was there and he backed it, and we shared a moment. And he had Sir Talbot in the last. Timmy Murphy rode that at 10-1. So we had a great day, and he died just over 3 years later. So to have that memory is a great memory of the Cheltenham Gold Cup.
That's beautiful.
So
I'm going to go with a stablemate in one. I'm going to give 3 races, which were all actually around the time. And if you look at the names of the horses that won the Gold Cup and those, they're really evocative names. Imperial Call, Cool Dawn, Seymour Business, Looks Like Trouble, Best Mate, Kicking King, War of Attrition. And then Koto Star obviously was a French name, but a horse that I think really captured the imagination. But when he was turned over in 2008 by Denman, bit of after time, but I seem to recall back in Denman, I actually backed him each way on the day because I couldn't see him out of the 3, even though he was probably
I
5 to
loved that race because I was at the top of the grandstand and Sam Thomas gave Denman. I don't think Denman was ever the same horse after that race, but Denman, it was the tank. It was a pulverised Call a Star and forced him into mistakes. It was one of the most best front-running, jumping, galloping, rhythmic performances you're ever going to see in a racecourse.
Do you know what's funny? Ruby Walsh was saying recently about how he points out that British races are run too hard a lot of the time, and the horses basically don't really recover properly from it. And Ruby, of course, rode in that race, but he wouldn't have given the ride that Denman got because, like Sam Thomas, in the race itself, it was probably a flawless ride because, like, he was such a strong stayer, lovely way of going, like the tank, like. And he would jump for fun, fine for pressure, relish the hill. And Call a Star wasn't quite as strong a stayer as him. He was more of a classy horse, but he wasn't really right after it.
No, it was a heavyweight boxer performance.
Heavyweight boxer. And obviously, like, he was around the same era as Call a Star, and you had these stablemates. I mean, imagine Paul Nicholls would probably, I mean, okay, I say it in jest, but Paul Nicholls would probably looking to Aintree for these horses now. Anyway, so the other 3 I'm going to give... what are we going to year-wise here? So Conor O'Dwyer would have been, I think, would rightly be considered, an absolute gentleman. And Mouse Morris is one of my favourite people in racing. So when they were of attrition, it's 18 years ago now, it's hard to believe. But that race, and like they'd be a hedge hunter and forget the past. Maybe it wasn't a vintage renewal of the race, but war of attrition to win for Mouse, I think. That meant so much to him. And the final one I will give Don Cossack, 2016.
Brian Cooper. Same colours. Michael Leary's maroon colours.
I just love that horse. I mean, I remember going to the homecoming. I think Gordon might have been in a different yard then, actually, and apologies if not, but the homecoming was in Summerhill, I think.
In Meath, yeah.
Yeah, and the horse was paraded through the streets, and I kind of just ended up going to the bar with Gordon and whoever else was there for the day, and even though I was actually working, it was kind of like a Hunter S. Thompson type journalism where it's like live the journalist
Gonzo
life.
Johnny.
Gonzo. I was certainly Gonzo going home, but yeah. But the horse, you know what the funny thing is, JD, you see him that day, he was absolutely stunning. Like, he was the most good looking horse. He had that striking black and white feature. And I loved him as a horse. He was, I don't even know if I backed him actually on the day, but he was 9-4 favourite, won it well. But we've Gallop and Deschamps this year, obviously trying to win it for the second time, and I suspect he mightn't go off the price he went off last year.
What surprised you when you first went to Cheltenham?
Do you know what? Actually, it's how actually stunningly beautiful the area is around it. Because
the Cotswolds,
like,
I've never done that. I've never ventured because I've been too busy. I've never gone to the Hollow Bottom, Nigel Twist Davies pub, or the Apple Tree, or these pubs, or Stow in the Wold, or I don't even know if that's a place that's near it, but it just sounds like it. But all these places around, these beautiful villages and ale houses and all these kind of places.
Well, I've this notion that England has a lot of kind of towns and cities that are quite run down, and a lot of these areas that actually voted for Brexit, where there were, I mean, it was fascinating actually. I was looking into the miners' strike, its 40-year anniversary. Didn't really know much about it, but sort of started reading into it, and a lot of these former mining areas, run down kind of towns, like, actually voted for Brexit out of a sense of kind of dissatisfaction with the way life is going. So I would argue that, like, Irish cities sometimes can look prettier than English cities, but when you actually go to an English town, an old town like Winchcombe, like, it literally blows you away. Like, I mean, Adair wouldn't be in the halfpenny place to it, and Adair is a lovely town. It is absolutely, it's like something out of Emmerdale Farm, and it's just the pubs, the buildings. It's like kind of like a Roman architecture. Absolutely stunning. And Cheltenham town itself is lovely. I'd love to go to a game there actually and see Cheltenham play, but Cheltenham town is lovely. So that's actually one of the things that struck me most, as obviously the crowds and that and the madness of it, but how beautiful the area is what has struck me.
The scale of Cheltenham, I found the most surprising thing. The intimidatory factor of the fact that this is the big leagues. This is the relentlessness of the crowd size. You're punch drunk with the relentlessness of the races. The noise. This is like a football stadium, and it's a race course.
Yeah,
and you've 60 to 70,000 people there every day.
And that's kind of like, I've said this before, but that's gone from a lot of race meetings now, that atmosphere. And in Ireland, it's pretty rare, if you ask me. Like, it's, you get it at the Dublin Racing Festival.
You get it at Punchestown.
To an extent at Punchestown, and Galway.
Yeah.
But
Cheltenham has
it's
a bigger beast.
It's a bigger beast. I to be honest, I don't think anything compares to it in Ireland. And when you go over and you see, I suppose, the changes as well. Like, it's 21 years since I watched the race, and like, you wouldn't want to flaunt a tricolour now because it would be seen as triumphalism. I mean, Ireland is expected to have about 20 winners this year.
Absolutely. Let's go through these quite quickly. The best trial you've seen all season?
I'm going to actually say Sergino winning the
the Triumph Hurdle.
Just because
the fastest final furlong.
Yeah, no,
on the clock.
I think that's a race that's worth watching again, because Sergino, there are a couple of aspects to it, and I won't go long here, but Sergino was catapulted into favourite for the Triumph Hurdle afterwards, but he actually beat a horse in France who Willie Mullins has, Salvatore Mundi, who hasn't been seen since, but he beat Bird of Road by 10 lengths. And now, I think Bird of Road probably, who's out at Cheltenham now, actually one of my 10 to follow. I think he might have been not quite at his best that day, but if you look at Melantino, who was third, who's been dropped, I think, 10 or 11 pounds since he was given an initial mark. I genuinely don't think it would have happened in Irish horse, but the handicapper probably has a fair point. But he went hard, and Sergino sort of sat in second. But like, he was absolutely, like, I'd say the McManus horse is very good, and I think he's a really proper chase making. He absolutely hammered him for a horse with little experience. So he looks an out-and-out machine. Could be a serious champion hurdle horse going forward.
Reed and Tommy Wrong beat Ila Lantique in the rescheduled Grade 1 Lawlers of Nice hurdle back in January. I felt they went a good gallop. The front two came clear. I thought that was a very good trial. The best jumping performance you've witnessed to date this season, I would say Galopin des Champs at Christmas. But the issue I have is that I don't feel he jumped well into John Durkin at Punchestown, and which Galopin will we see at Cheltenham? I don't really remember that many other exuberant jumpers this season that have wowed me.
Yeah, I think his performance at Christmas was kind of like, I really wasn't expecting him to be that good. And like, when Jack Kennedy says Jerry Callan more or less ran his race afterwards, you're like, Jesus, how good is this horse? And then I actually thought for a 4-runner race, the Dublin Racing Festival Gold Cup was really intriguing to watch. And I thought Paul Townend had all aces covered, had all angles covered at all times. But I'm actually going to give my performance so far, it was in a beginner's chase, and it was Gaelic Warrior. He was given a racing post rating of 150.
This is at Limerick
in Punchestown. So the race at Limerick obviously was known for other things, but like when you think what Ilete Tomp did since at Leopardstown, what he did at Limerick wasn't bad either. But the Punchestown performance, and that was over 2 miles 3 for a horse who stays 3 miles very well. I think we watched the race together actually at Punchestown last year. When I wasn't certain he'd get home. But he did, and I know he blocked his copybook at Leopardstown, but that performance at Punchestown jump, I've rarely seen a horse jump as well. Maybe his stablemate Blood Destiny, who we'll talk about later, on his debut. But Gaelic Warriors for me was amazing.
Best under the radar horse at present who could surprise at the festival. The one I'm going for is Dancing City. Don't believe he's getting the credit for his win at the Dublin Racing Festival. He won his point to point. He chased home Ballyburn over 2 miles at Punchestown last season. He was not stopping over 2 miles 6 furlongs the last day. If there's further improvement, he could run well wherever he turns up. Dancing City for me.
Yeah, it's funny because he was sent off such a big price at the Dublin Race Festival that year. He probably is a little bit unheralded, but if I'm not sure I don't think the forecast is too bad, but if the ground is quite soft, he really did handle it well at Leopardstown. I'm going to give Bottler Secret. Now, there's a caveat here because I'm not sure he's going to run. But I was quite sweet on him. It was a really frustrating situation last Sunday because he was put in like 5 or 6 to 1, and I with the long odds on shot, and I was actually thinking Bottler Secret could well go off favourite here. But unfortunately, the odds on shot then was taken out, so you had a massive Rule 4, but it was probably still a good price.
Yeah.
He produced. I thought this was one of the performances of certainly of the juvenile division. Anyway, he races very behind the bridle as well. So like I was coming down the back straight, I was like, is this horse travelling at all? And then at the second last, Sean Flanagan gave him one very, very gentle kind of nudge, and he literally just put the race to bed in a couple of strides. And he can jump better now. I think Gavin might make the call not to go to Cheltenham, but if he does, keep an eye on him for all that he'll probably have his work cut out against Sergino.
Gavin Cromwell's Bottler Secrets. The market leader you think that might get beaten. We don't want any horse to get beaten, but the one I don't necessarily think might win is Manila Indo in the cross-country chase. I don't think graded form transfers automatically to cross-country races. I think he'd be a horse I'd be looking to take on.
I'd be the same, actually. I'm slightly surprised how short he is, and it's a very good renewal of the race. Like when Mouse Morris's horse, whose name escapes me now, the Fame and Glory horse, won at the November meeting.
Foxy Jacks,
Foxy Jacks, when he won at the November meeting, he was one. Now I know it's not a handicap at Cheltenham this time, but he won off 148, and he's a horse that I found a bit of a head the ball, to be honest. I found him hard to predict, but he actually really took to the fences that day. Mouse said afterwards, hopefully he'll go to Cheltenham with a great chance. And I think Mouse has a couple of interesting horses, particularly Gentleman's Game in the Gold Cup. But as a target trainer, he's without peers, and he warmed up for this with a lovely run at Leopardstown, and he's been given a break since. And I think he's interesting. But I'm actually going to give Fact of Foil.
Odds on. I don't like that as well.
The problem with Fact of Foil is that obviously he was beaten. There are a couple of problems with him. He was beaten by American Mike, who admittedly is actually a really talented performer on his day, but I just honestly have no idea what he achieved at Leopardstown. And that was the one blot on the copybook of the Leopardstown Dublin Race Festival. That was a 2-horse race that became a bit of a farce. Now, it's with reluctance I say this, but he's even money odds on, and I'm just not sure quite how good he is yet.
Rapid fire, what's your lucky race at Cheltenham?
A lucky race at Cheltenham would probably be the Albert Bartlett. Penn Hill comes to my mind at a good price. I've tipped winners in that at reasonable prices. But yeah,
your bogey race,
probably the Gold Cup.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Entry Grand National is like probably the race I have the worst record.
We will
ever.
fix this. We will
Maybe
fix
we
this.
will.
We will get you the winner, Johnny, of the Entry Grand National this year.
The Gold Cup, I tend to not have a great record in. I think I backed Synchronised and I backed Denman that year, but I probably had like 30 bets in the Gold Cup at this stage, and only 2 or 3 of them have won.
Didn't fancy Synchronised personally, I have to say, that day. Remember, there was good money from on the day. My lucky race is from talking to people is the bumper.
Yeah.
So I've had Dunguib, Fernie Hollow, Silver Concord.
I backed Fernie Hollow. Remember the two of us cheering in the. That's right.
And Harry Molly at 33s from talking to people.
Yeah.
With Donny Hassett and Claire, the trainer, told me to keep an eye on that Harry Molly. He fancied it. And then my bogey race is the Albert Bartlett. No, not the Albert Bartlett. That's the toughest race at Cheltenham. I think it's the toughest race of the festival. My bogey race is Stairs Hurdle. I've never had the winner in Stairs Hurdle because I always look for up and comers, and the Stairs Hurdle generally goes to horses that can continue to win it, repeat winners.
The Upper will win it this year, I think.
And just to finish these 10 questions, Johnny, for Cheltenham, the best 2024 Cheltenham Festival storyline would be, have a think for a moment, I would say I'd love to see Fermanagh trainer David Christie and Wexford jockey Barry O'Neill win their first Cheltenham race. They'd wing leader chinned in the Fox Hunters a couple of years ago by Bill Away. They've got Ferns Lock this year. Either Barry win a race or for David Christie to win a race. I'd love to see that.
Yeah,
two good people in the game.
I got to know David and his son of the same name a bit last year, and David was actually quite unwell around this time last year, but has recovered well. And I'd love him to win a Fox Hunters. As you say, like he's a very respected figure in the point-to-point scene. And it's funny what price Vosley was last year. Like he was 9-4 or something.
He was sick. I read that during the week he was ill. That's interesting for this year.
It is interesting because they really did rate him. Now I know Ferns Lock is probably going to be favourite, but Vosley is probably capable of much better performance. But Barry O'Neill is a gentleman as well, and I just love that alliance, Wexford and Fermanagh. You wouldn't put them together, and to have like it's hard to train horses in racing backwaters like the west of Ireland and Ulster. There are some very talented operators, but I'd actually go with that as well.
That's your storyline. Make mine a double J. We've got so much coverage of Cheltenham to come with the Cheltenham Show digitally every day, and we'll obviously next Friday's pod we'll get all the latest info ahead of the Cheltenham Festival on the Racing Pod. I'm going to go for Johnny, 155 Newbury on Saturday, and this is very aptly named. Take Out the Sea. The horse is named Cheltenham, trained by Dan Skelton, won 3 handicap chases last season, including over the course and distance. This is the Great Wood Gold Cup. He returned to form at Kempton last time. I think he's well weighted. I think he's a player. Cheltenham, about 7.5 to 1 each way.
I'll go with Spillane Tower in the Webster Cup.
Right, I'm having if it goes ahead.
This is kind of more of a price-based selection, and I would be worried about the ground because it's so bad, and he has to give £7 to Blood Destiny, but I thought he really beat him readily the last day at Punchestown. Now, the trip will probably be more in Blood Destiny's favour. I was actually at Navan the day Blood Destiny made his debut, and his jumping at times was absolutely spectacular. But I thought Spillane Tower, I'm actually surprised he's going to Cheltenham, to be honest. Jimmy Mangan to have a horse like that, of course, won the Grand National back in the day. But yeah, maybe he'll win here, but really testing ground. Spillane
Tower at Navan on Saturday and Cheltenham at Newbury on Saturday. Make mine a double J on the Racing Pod. This is the Racing Pod on Off the Ball. If you're listening to the free version of the podcast, we'll be leaving you here. But if you're looking for more, including our analysis of the Saturday cards at Kelso, Newbury and Doncaster and Sunday's fixture at Leopardstown, go to offtheball.com/join to subscribe and get the full podcast every Friday with all our racing tips, insights and stories from the week's action.